Joseph Yu-Shek Cheng is a renowned professor of political science and coordinator of Contemporary China Research Project at City University of Hong Kong. Professor Cheng publishes extensively on Chinese foreign policy and Hong Kong politics and has been actively involved in the Hong Kong pro-democracy movement and serves as the convener of its umbrella group, Alliance for True Democracy. Today, Professor Cheng is in Dharamshala to attend the 8th International Conference of Tibet Support Groups, and we are glad to have him with us in our studio. Welcome to In Conversation with Tibettv.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So let me start by asking Professor, what brought you here to the International Tibet Support Groups meeting?
I am interested in Tibet, and I think Hong Kong people share a lot of common issues with Tibetan people. We face the same common threat. And we believe that a regime which does not respect the dignity of its people and the basic rights of the people cannot last long. And therefore, I certainly hope that Hong Kong people will understand Tibetan people better, understand its culture, its religion better, so that we can support each other better.
Right. So how relevant do you think the protest for pro-democracy protest in Hong Kong is with the Tibetan freedom struggle?
We share the same ideal, fight for freedom, liberty, democracy, rule of law, and so on. And we both firmly believe in non-violent struggles. I have been advocating a long-term, peaceful, non-violent, non-cooperation campaign to expose the lack of legitimacy on the part of the Hong Kong government. And the fact, and without legitimacy and the support of its people, this government cannot govern effectively. So Tibetan people and Hong Kong people understand very well that under tremendously difficult circumstances, facing a very strong, formidable threat, we still stick to our nonviolent struggle principle. It is not a matter of expediency. It's a matter of our firm belief in that the means to achieve the end is a very, very important consideration.
Right. How and why do you think the Chinese government or Communist Party's repressive policies in Tibet, particularly in this world of high surveillance and strong military presence in Tibet, has failed to achieve its desired results?
I think the Chinese authorities, being a Marxist-Leninist regime, is too much tempted to be in full control. And when you want to control everything, the people certainly are not happy. The people certainly believe that their dignity, their basic rights have been violated. Now, the party regime is most concerned with its survival and its monopoly of political power and is unwilling to make concessions. I'm sure if the Chinese leadership realizes that Tibetan people and Hong Kong people simply want to be left alone. They do not threaten Chinese sovereignty, they do not threaten China's security, they simply want to live their own life and enjoy their freedom, their religion, their culture, and so on. But the very nature of the Marxist-Leninist regime goes against this. The regime wants to be in control. The regime wants to remove all possible potential threats. And in these attempts, they only exacerbate the challenges facing them.
Right. So you were saying in an attempt to take the entire control, now that Xi Jinping takes power for an indefinite period of time, there are a lot of protests going on, like Hong Kong protest and protest in favor of Tibetans. Do you think these protests point to a crack between the Communist Party and the civil societies? And if so, how problematic do you think it can become for the Chinese Communist Party?
At this stage, Xi Jinping remains the principal leader or the only leader in the Chinese hierarchy. and therefore he has to assume responsibility for all failures, for all mistakes. And various factions, various interest groups, which believe that their interests have not been well protected and promoted under the sole leadership of Xi Jinping, will be looking for opportunities to discredit Xi Jinping, will be looking for opportunities to ask him to assume responsibility for all the failures of the Chinese regime. Certainly, Chinese people realize the economy is not doing well, the international environment has become increasingly unfavorable, and therefore pressure on Xi Jinping will become greater and greater.
Right. Having said that, with recent developments such as China's scraping of Hong Kong extradition bill, how strong do you think is the increasing sense of Chinese Communist Party's fear of losing its legitimacy to rule in Tibet and Hong Kong?
I think as early as 2003, when Beijing wanted to introduce Article 23 legislation in Hong Kong, and this crisis triggered 500,000 people marching in the streets, and the Chinese authorities had to acknowledge that the hearts of Hong Kong has returned to China, but the hearts of Hong Kong people have not returned. The Chinese authorities' response has been give Hong Kong various types of economic privileges, like the closer economic partnership agreement, like integration into the Greater Bay Area development project, like various preferences for Hong Kong in the One Belt, One Road initiative, and so on. But it fails to realize that economic benefits alone do not satisfy Hong Kong people. They still want their own basic freedoms, their lifestyles, and their dignity. Moreover, these economic benefits are not shared equitably. The gap between the rich and poor in Hong Kong has been widening, and among all large cities in the world, Hong Kong is the one with the biggest gap between the rich and poor.
Right. So let me wrap up this interview by asking one last question. What do you think can Tibetan activists learn from Hong Kong protesters in terms of strategies and use of digital media?
I think the most important thing is that the older leaders have to respect the initiative and the creativity of the younger generation. As an old activist, I certainly have a lot of admiration and respect for the bravery and for the creativity of the young people. We have a lot to learn from the young people.
Thank you, Professor, for giving us this opportunity. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching Tibet TV. See you in the next episode of In Conversation with Tibet TV.